Like, it seems like midlife crises for people is happening younger and younger, like decades and decades younger. And it seems like my generation, like, as soon as people turn 30, they get into like this whole thing like, I thought my life would have been further than this.
Yeah.
But lie to you not, y'all, I'll be 29 in about like 2-3 weeks. I'll be 30 next year. I'm excited for my 30s, bro, because I'm just like, man, I'm excited to see what God is going to do. Because, man, if he's been this good to me in my 20s, in my whole life, then I'm excited to see what he's going to do next. And I just like how you said that. You guys have been saying that. It's just like, it's not about our timing. It's about God's timing.
The end result is the same every time, which is you weep bitterly because you can't take back what you had done, right? And here it is, man. God was looking at, you know what I'm saying? And even though you cried for a little bit, you know what I'm saying, because you couldn't see what was going on, man, it's still a blessing, man. And I know that God did that for a reason, because whatever it was that you were dreaming of that was going to happen, the same way that you were dreaming about all these things that it looked like we're going to be promising because of making this deal, all that's going to come from just whatever God shows you to do with what it is that he's put in your hand.
It's Joseph, bro. It's straight up Joseph. It's like God is giving you the vision, and it's like, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen just after a couple. I'm not calling the times where you felt like this sucks as just a couple of tears, but it might be more than this. It might be some more suffering until you get to glory. And so it's like, and I'm obviously not just speaking to you, but I'm speaking to anybody that's, you know, willing to listen. Like, you know, things don't come easy, especially when you got big dreams. Like, I can only imagine, like, one of the hardest lessons I've learned. I was having this conversation with again, some of my EHS brothers, just talking about not spending any money I haven't gotten yet. Like, I don't know how, like, for me, like, doing contracts with different clients, or like setting up different events or something like that, I'm already in my mind like, okay, with this event I can afford to go get this. I'm like, bro,
right.
I am not spending that money until weeks after it's been completed. Honestly, I'm not trying to do that at all. I'm trying to act like it didn't even exist. And so obviously you take into consideration, obviously, the whole negotiation at the beginning, but never spend money before you get it. That's a setup for failure.
Absolutely, man. Because it's funny because I just seen, actually, I was just talking to Raquel about, I was talking to my wife about it, regarding, like, just, I honestly believe that God is in the business of taking time out of the equation. So it seems like a lot of the things that, like, a lot of the time that we've taken to learn hard lessons and all that kind of stuff kind of puts us behind and causes things to be delayed. But no, I honestly believe that once you catch your rhythm, man, once you really get clarity on everything, that God has a way of restoring everything that, like, as it says in scripture, the cankerworm, the palmer worm, the caterpillars, all of them ate up all your crops. You know what I'm saying? God has a way of restoring it, man, like it never even happened. And so I honestly believe that when we catch our rhythm and understand that the stops that come when it seems like we've gained so much momentum, that they're God ordained stops. They're not hiccups. They're not even like setbacks. They're not even really mistakes. It's just all a part of the process and the journey, right? And so even, like, you know, going back to music has points of rest in it, right? Everybody talks about the beat drop, right? Everybody talks about the beat drop. That's all that is a rest. And it makes the song so much doper when you allow that rest to come, and then it drops in, right? And then everybody's turn.
Right.
That's what we have to understand as far as like the rhythm aspect of our living. We're so like we don't want to pace ourselves, right? And pace and rhythm all have, they're all intertwined, man. They're interconnected, man, and it's all a part of the process.
Time and a place. Were you gonna say
Yeah,
something, Josh?
yeah, bro. I gotta speak to that. There's so much packed in what you just said, um, in regards to like rest and the beat drop. Like I'm thinking about even there's a lot of times on the journey that I felt like I had to constantly have my hand to the plow. You know what I mean? I had to constantly be working, and I would get caught up in busy work. My mind was constantly going and never stopped. I always think like I had to get this done. I got 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 to get this done. And man, the the truth of the matter is sometimes, not even sometimes, a lot of times, the way God has worked with me on this, when I was waiting for that email to come through from my engineer sending me the new design, the latest design, because I would be waiting on my email. Or when I was waiting for the contract to come through or whatever, when I was waiting on it instead of waiting on God, I promise you, they never came. They
Mm-hmm.
never came. And the way God has dealt with me is when I finally would allow my spirit to rest,
Yep.
when I finally would allow my spirit to rest, I would forget about it. I come back to my email and boom, it's in my inbox. Like God was training me. He was conditioning me. Like literally, like let that go. You feel me? Like let me work. You don't always have to be on it. And I think there is definitely something towards to being consistent, right? And we think a lot of times, especially in entrepreneurship, we're familiar with the term like 24/7. But you were talking about the Sabbath earlier, bro. For us, it's 24/6. You know what I'm saying? Like work, but then also take your rest. You feel me? Let the beat drop. And when you do that, we give God an opportunity to show us how he's in it. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
one of the dopest experiences that I said on that live, man, me and my cousin literally in January 2020 drove to Mexico, Tijuana, and linked up with 5 manufacturers. Five, because we're trying to find the perfect quote. We're trying to get the quote that's gonna make. We didn't get any. All of them in the states were too high. We couldn't fund it. We're like, we can't do that. No. And then we went to Mexico and we're like, let's try to see what they got down there. And they were charging the same thing that they were charging out in the United States. And I just let it go for a little bit. March came and I hit my partner and I was just checking on him to see how he was doing and how he was holding up through COVID. And he happened to be his a Kickstarter. He had just started his Kickstarter, so he just started raising money for a product that he was about to launch, and that product just so happened to be made out of the same material that the leash was made out of. And,
Mm.
Wow.
and he gave me. He said, "Here's the contact. Here's the manufacturer. Call them. Tell them I sent you." Right? That manufacturer cut my quote in half. In half. Everybody else was hitting us with $50,000 quotes. They came back with a $25,000 quote. I'm like, I'm not going to buy a Mercedes, but I will buy a new Honda Civic. You feel me? A new Honda Accord. I will get a loan for that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I kid you not, like I was like, wow. Like it's those types of things. It's those types of testimonies where I'm like, I know I'm not in it because when I couldn't get it done, he did it. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I know it's not just me. I just need to stay consistent, keep walking the path. And I know that experience, that experience wasn't for naught. But Donald, like when you say God has a way of removing time out of the equation, like somebody listening right now could be like, you know what? I am however years old. I'm too old. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I'm too old to get this done. And I won't never be able to make the time up. I'm too far behind. I've been too stagnant. But the truth of the matter is that God is completely outside of time and he knows what levers to press, what doors to open, what buttons to push to make sure that you get exactly where you need to be at the appointed time.
Yep.
Period.
Yep.
That's facts,
Facts.
bro. That's facts. That's
Facts.
that's why it's like it's low key kind of crazy to me. Like it seems like midlife crises for people is happening younger and younger, like decades and decades younger. And it seems like my generation, like as soon as people turn 30, they get into like this whole thing like, I thought my life would have been further than this.
Yeah.
But lie to you not, y'all, I'll be 29 in what, about like 2-3 weeks. I'll be 30 next year. I'm excited for my 30s, bro, because I'm just like, man, I'm excited to see what God is going to do. Because, man, if he's been this good to me in my 20s, in my whole life, then I'm excited to see what he's going to do next. And I just like how you said that. You guys have been saying that. It's just like, it's not about our timing. It's about God's timing. And then, like, I just really appreciate, like, just hearing that, bro, because I think a lot of times we think that when we have our idea of what a breakthrough is, or our idea of what success is, or our idea of what certain things look like, then we get a little bit discouraged. Like, well, my thing, my project didn't turn out like Donald's project, so I'm not really a success. Or, yeah, I seen Brandon P's numbers at the end of the year. I'm not like Brandon P, so I can't be like him. Or, well, my leash wasn't like Josh's leash, so I'm not successful. And it's like, comparison is a killer, bro. Comparison will really like steal the joy away from what God is trying to plant in you. He didn't tell you to go look around and compare. He's like, trust me in this process. Trust me in what I've given you. And I think that we can't just, trust God with the vision, but just understand that he's going to provide for that too, and be patient, and being able enough to wait on that. I think like this, in this time in my life, like I've been trying to condition myself or renew my mind in such a way to not have a preconceived notion on where the provision is going to come from. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's one thing to be patient. It's another thing to be like, oh, well, it's going to have to look like this, and it's going to have to function like this, and it's going to have to be like this. Or I'm in a leadership position in church, and I need these type of people to do these type of things, and they have to operate on this level. And it's like, God's like, I don't work like that. I use the weak, foolish, and despised things. I use the things that people don't think that they're going to use. The people that I've used in the Bible were murderers, liars, cheaters, prostitutes. It's like I use the things that people don't think are useful, and I get the glory out of it. And
but you know what's crazy about it, JR, is it's not about we don't know where the provision's going to come from. We know where the provision comes from. Right. We know where it comes from. Where we get caught up at is the when. When is it going to happen? Because like we're in a society, in a culture where, in Western culture, we're taught to just grind. All we do is grind. We work. I sleep when I'm dead. 24/7. You know what I'm saying? No days off. All the jargon that you see on any inspirational, motivational outlet that there is that's out there. But one of the problems with it is like, for instance, goal setting. Like, I recently was watching a podcast, and they were talking about that they came to the conclusion that goal setting is stupid, right? And I could kind of understand and see where they were coming from. Where there's failure in goal setting is usually with, like, for instance, I was taught the way to teach people to set goals is you set SMART goals, right? So basically, the SMART is an acronym, which is like, the S is specific. The goal has to be specific. It has to be measurable. It has to be attainable. It has to be realistic, and then it has to be time-based. It has to be time-based or time-bound. And we always mess up when it gets to that time thing, because we set time as a deadline, and this is when this needs to be done by. When we get there and it's not done in the time that we set for it, then we feel like we're failures because we didn't meet what the expectation was. And as opposed to setting time in the sense of, okay, when I reach this specific time, I'm going to assess the situation, evaluate, and see what progress I've made to this point. And if I haven't accomplished everything that needed to be, or that I thought should be accomplished, or I haven't completed the task, then I'm going to readjust the time so that way I can make up whatever else needs to be done. That's what it is. Again, it's the process. We get caught up in the product, and we want to see the product by this certain time. But sometimes it takes longer than what it is that we project. Like our good old friend, man, 10 minutes tops. No, it's not going to be 10 minutes tops. It's going to be a lot longer than that. We know you farther than 10 minutes out, bro. Don't even lie to me like that. Shout out to Lionel and Tyler Bright.
I wasn't gonna say his name, but you said it,
bro. Nah, man, nah. Lionel used to kill me with that 10 minutes tops. Be like, bro, you know good and well you in 30 minutes of traffic. Stop with the 10 minutes tops.
Hey, you know what was I knew you was I was waiting on you to tap in about that, because you know you preached the word on provision a few months ago. You know that was fire, talking about how you know when Abraham went up to worship with Isaac, you know, and he was saying that God was going to provide the sacrifice, right? And there ended up being a ram in the thicket. It's like, you know, if we speak in those, you know, biblical terms, like that call that I had, that was the ram in the thicket. You know, that was, I didn't know where it was going to come from. I didn't know how it was going to come. I didn't know when it was going to come, but God made a way. But something I really want to speak to in those moments, man, when you're going and you don't know where the provision is going to come from, the people who are along the journey with you, it's easy for them to grow weary. You know, you have to make sure that when you don't know where or how, or what is going to come, we know who it's going to come from, right? We know God's going to provide it. But when you don't know the other variables to it, the journey can start to become disheartening. And you have to guard your heart and make sure that you don't allow doubt to creep in, because doubt will try to creep in and it'll try to snuff out your flame and keep this little light of mine burning. You know, it's going to try to cover it up, you know, and keep it quiet and smother it out. The next thing is gone like smoke. And I'll speak to it because I know she'd allow me to be transparent about it. For me, you know, my wife has been that a lot of times. You know, as much as she has pushed me along, and she knows I wouldn't have been able to get Ergo Dog to the point that it is today without her taking care of our kids, because our kids got to be taken care of, and the house has to be held down. And if shout out to WMD and the wives holding us up, and just the spouses that are holding up the one that's out pursuing the vision, the dream, whatever it is. But there's been so many of those times or those letdowns where, like for the prototype, for instance, she didn't even want to see another prototype. By the time 13 came, she didn't want to see it. She was like, you know what, Josh, just let me know when it's done. Don't keep me updated. I don't want to be up to date no more. You know what I mean? And as my wife, I wanted to share with somebody. Yeah. You know what I mean? But sometimes even that excitement just had to be between me and God, or it had to be between me and my cousin, who was my business partner at the time. But I couldn't keep Nadia in it because she didn't have the same vision. She didn't have the same hope. You know what I mean? She didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel because the vision wasn't given to her. You know what I mean? So it's like, you got to have somebody, and who knows, I don't know what Isaac looked like on the way up to that mountain. You know what I'm saying? But could you imagine how hard it could have been for Abraham a number of ways if Isaac was sad about it? You feel me? If he was scared about it, like that makes it even harder. But when you have someone who's walking upside that mountain with you and they're joyful, you know what I'm saying? And they're still encouraging you, you know, and reassuring you and trust you and trust the process as well. Like, it makes the journey just that much smoother. But you have to have discernment to know, okay, who is this for me at this particular point in time? Because that position can switch and roles can shift. And maybe it's in the beginning because it was her in the beginning, but then in the middle, it wasn't her no more. You feel me? It was my cousin, and then he left, and it's not him no more. And now it's y'all, because we watched me develop. You feel me? And we together. So it's like those roles will change, but we just have to know who's who, and we have to make sure we're guarding our hearts with this the seed that God gave us.
You also got to learn, the art of encouraging yourself. That's the thing. Because, like, what's funny, I'm reminded when you say that, I'm reminded, and this has been something I that's been like recurring to me recently, is I think about David. So the story goes is that David and his men went out and they were handling business doing X, Y, and Z, and their women and children were left at the camp. When they got back to their campsite, all the women in the children were taken, and he knew who had taken them. And so all of the men were crushed in spirit because they was like, man, we was out here doing what we was supposed to do, and uh our women have been taken, our children have been taken, man, our stuff is, our stuff is gone. And it got to the point where, look, man, this wasn't something that like these dudes weren't new to who David was. They have been in many battles with David by this point. And in this one particular incident where everything was taken when they got back there, these dudes started talking, like murmuring among themselves, like, man, if it wasn't for David, man, this wouldn't have happened. Maybe we should go ahead and just go ahead and off him.
Mm-hmm.
David, not only that, it wasn't like all their stuff was gone and David's stuff was still there. David's stuff was gone too, right? So he's there mourning with them, and they're upset to the point where they wanted to, because they don't have foresight, they don't have vision, right? They can't see past their current circumstance. David is like, man, what did he do? He reverted to what he always knew to do, which was, I'm gonna withdraw, go away, and spend time with the Father.
Mm-hmm.
And it said that, and it literally says that he went, got the ephod, the linen ephod, all that stuff, put it on to go and enter into worship and prayer with God, and he encouraged himself in the Lord, and he got the word from God. He got a renewed vision from God as to what the next steps were going to be, which was, God told him, he says, I want you to go pursue them, I want you to overtake them, and I want you to recover everything. And when he did so, there were a few men that he went back there with that word with, and there was only a few of the men that were able to go with him.
Wow.
And they went and accomplished everything that God told them that was going to happen. And not only did they do that, because technically the other dudes was they wasn't done having a pity party. They was like looking at their circumstance, and you know what? David would have been well within his rights to been like, yep, I got everything that I recovered everything, and y'all didn't even bother to go and fight with us, man. Forget y'all, kick rocks, take your stuff and go. No, he brought all their stuff back with his stuff and blessed them. So it's something about learning, like going through those dark stages. I think God ordains those moments where you ain't gonna have nobody that's around you that's gonna be able to understand and see. And this is me talking in foresight, because I feel like, for me, a big hurdle for me has always been being misunderstood, or people not seeing what it is I see. And I think that I felt like for a long time, in order for me to be productive and accomplish what I need to accomplish, people need to see what I see. And it's not, man. At the end of the day, you don't have to believe in my dream. You don't have to see what I see. Sometimes you just got to do it, and then people will see it later. It's show and tell, right? And I got to put action and feet to what this vision is, and eventually, like I said, the provision coming for the vision. A lot of that happens when people see you already in motion, right? When people see you already in motion, for whatever reason, man, I don't know what the dynamics are, but God always seems to bring people from north, south, east, west to come, and at the right time, at the right place, in the right moment. And next thing you know, you walking in that suddenly.
Right.
Yeah.
The old saying, people are more willing to help somebody pushing their car than people waiting on the side of the road with their hood open.
Amen to that.
Bro. Real quick, before we go, because I think we were catching up on an hour, and maybe this might be a bonus, but before, and if we can backtrack a little bit, Donald, you talked about the SMART method. What was the S?
The S is specific.
Specific. So what, and let's just do like maybe like a generic thing. Like, can you give like a practical way maybe that you have used a SMART method, or maybe just a generic SMART method for people to kind of walk through to use it in their own journey?
So specific, I would say. So for instance, like the SMART method, I believe I used the SMART method when we were planning on doing the Watch Me Develop podcast. Like that was a SMART method. So I said, okay, specifically, what do I want this to be? I want this podcast to be not just me as a talking head, but I also wanted to bring in a couple of other people that I knew who are like-minded as far as like entrepreneurship is concerned, that have a biblical world perspective and and a biblical worldview, and so we can have a conversation that will have some depth and some content that not only will help that'll be beneficial to each other, but be beneficial to everybody that hears or listens and tunes in. And so measurable, what I wanted to do was I said, okay, let me figure out what this looks like in terms of how often we should put out an episode, and what would be reasonable. So is this attainable? Yeah, well, I figured, well, with three of us, it'd definitely be attainable because between the three of us, we'd be able to come up with content. As far as it being realistic, I say, yeah, well, I know we're very busy, but if I can put this together in a presentation to show you guys that this is not much different than when we get together and talk anyway about stuff.
Right.
We're just giving allowing an audience. We're tearing down that was it, the third wall or whatever, so that way people can, or the fourth wall, yeah, tearing down the fourth wall, so people can see, and giving them a peek into what our conversations are, just being real candid and everything. And then lastly was time. I was like, okay, what does the time look like as far as doing this? And so I think I presented this back in like
January,
around like January. Yeah. And I said, okay, could 30 days out be a good mile marker for us to get this thing started? And of course, as you know, we didn't start exactly 30 days out. I was like, okay, once we got there, it was like, okay, so what do we need to do to get this going? And then we were up and running in a couple of weeks. So again, that whole thing about time not being a deadline to where like, oh, it has to be, I'm being so strict and stringent about, being rigid about it. But in other words, looking at time as a sense of, okay, this is a good mile marker for me to take an evaluation as to what has progressed up to this point.
I'm like scrolling back to see when the text thread started.
Hey, real quick, I want to give somebody this. Be kind to yourself.
Oh yeah.
Like, be kind to yourself when you're pursuing your passion or your vision, because this is a very unique situation where you can't be fired from this. You know what I mean? You don't have a boss that's going to fire you from this or tell you that you can't or yell at you or whatever the case. Like it's kind of a double-edged sword in the sense of when you get started, you get started. If you don't get started, you won't get started. But just be nice to yourself, give yourself grace, and just work with yourself and make sure that you're just kind. Just be kind to yourself, for real.
Fire, bruh.
Absolutely.
Wasn't January.
What was it?
December 29th.
Okay.
2021 at 8:02 p.m. Because I remember Donald texting us going, "Hey, so can I talk to y'all real quick?" I'm kind of like, "What you got cooked up?" But dang, man, that was a lot of scrolling I had to go through.
Hey, Jay, something else too that I know a lot of people have actually asked me. I actually know one of my homies actually is starting a podcast. He's starting a podcast and he peeped ours. You know what I mean? So I think there's definitely some type of inspiration there and encouragement. They doing it. I can see it. They're being delicate with it right now, and they're gonna release it. They're gonna drop it. But I got a few other friends who have seen and have been inquiring, like, man, what does it take to start a podcast? So I think something that would be a dope value that we could provide to our listeners, man, is just what exactly does someone need to start a podcast, if you could like share that, maybe that could be a extracurricular or a small bonus filler episode. Or I don't know if you got something quick right now, or if you want to just make that a reel, but people have been asking about it and they want to know.
For the sake of it, I can go deeper maybe on another piece of content or another episode. But if I were to give you the 30-second conversation, it's literally free to start a podcast. If you have a phone, you can start a podcast right now. There are, I'm not going to give out specifically what we use, but there are free resources out there. If you DM me or maybe submit or subscribe to some of our content, we'll be putting it out. And like, for the most part, there are some costs that we've had to acquire naturally, because the more content you make, you got to store it somewhere. But there's a way for you to cost effectively get started. It's a lot more simple than you think. And I know a lot of times when like Josh was joking, he's like, man, you producers over there got headphones and microphones and everything. But bro, you'd be how surprised how, just like Chris was saying last a couple episodes ago, how he was saying, man, it's kind of crazy how iPhones are kind of starting to catch up as far as quality goes.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, bro, you know what it comes down to is where I do side on the part where Chris is like, I want it to look professional. I'm the same way. Most people just want to consume content that's real and authentic. And they're not thinking about if it's in 4K by 60 frames per second. They're not worried about if it's in 24 frames or if it's 6K or all this other stuff. They just want to make sure that they can hear you well. They want to make sure that they can at least make out who they're getting this information from. So we'll definitely dive deeper into that, though, for sure. Like the functional part about starting a podcast, like It's super simple. It's funny, like all of a sudden, like, you know, that whole phenomenon where as soon as you purchase a car, or know somebody that has a certain car, you start seeing the car everywhere else. Yep. It's like all of a sudden, now that we've started a podcast, I've been seeing all the other podcasts, not just any podcast, but podcasts that are like ours that are out there. I'm like, okay, interesting.
Yep.
But
and
not
even
locally too. Yeah, facts. And so again, all ships rise with the tide. Listen. Let this be a public service announcement. Let me change cameras. Hold on. Where'd it go? Let me change cameras. There you go. Listen, if you want to copy what we're doing, just text me. You don't have to copy us without being our friend. We can be friends. I'm not that person. I give freely, but just don't be that guy just to copy and then act like, I don't know what you're talking about. Black and yellow. It's not watch me develop, it's see me develop. Like, come on, bro. Like, I know what you're doing, but yeah, man, we can all grow together. There's plenty of there's plenty of pie to go around.
Facts. And also there's a difference between copying and modeling. Right? You know what I'm saying? There's a difference. You definitely want to model. You know what I'm saying? You want to model because you can get places faster. Say hi. So she's supposed to be asleep. She's supposed to be asleep in the car. But another thing, say hi. But another thing is this. It's better to be done. Like, it don't have to be perfect. It just has to be done. Just get it done.
Facts.
Put it out. You can grow. Then you can develop. Just let people put it out and then develop.
Yes.
Speaking of which, because I got a project that I'm supposed to release before the end of summer. So JR, we got to get on that.
I got a beat for you. It's just, I got a beat for you. There's a drop when it goes to the harder part. I need to make sure that is like the rest part. The rest has to be.
Hey, man. Hey, we don't need perfection, man. We need productivity.
I know, but I'm sampling one of my favorite bands. I'm like, I have to. Once we get this sample cleared, it's like, it has to work. It has to.
All right.
I got something for you.
Okay. We need the summer is coming to a close quite quickly.
I know, August is tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right. With that being said, this has been Watch Me Develop. I'm John Butcher Jr. The gentleman with the long beard is Don the Baptist, and the gentleman with the beautiful and the gentleman with the. Speaking of which, did anybody notice that Josh got a haircut? But Josh got a haircut and just snuck it on us. He be
Mohawk Bonds.
The Mohawks be coming out all out of nowhere sometimes. But anyways, Stephen Joshua Bonds. This is Watch Me Develop. We love y'all. Peace.
Deuces.
Peace.